Hello, everybody. Today we are going to talk about school size, undergraduate population. Some schools have graduate populations, which can almost double the size of their school. Some schools just have an undergraduate population, a lot of liberal arts schools, for example. Um, but what does it mean to you when you're thinking about school size? So we usually break up school sizes into three categories. We would say like the 0 to 5,000 would be considered a small school. And when you do a search, for example, these schools will always start with the smallest schools in the beginning, going up to the biggest ones down at the bottom. And we did that. We've been doing that since we had the paper blue list. And the reason why is because if we did it alphabetically like this, you don't really learn anything about the schools. You're just looking at names, all these things are jumbled together. But what we realized is that when we have our students start to look at the list, and let's do a different one. Let's go from 5 to 15,000. We call these the medium-sized schools. So if we look at these, then I can just do a search. And now I'm learning about schools just from habit of using this in this layout and the results. I start to remember which schools are the big ones, and then just I get a feeling of like, okay, these are my larger mediums, and then I can kind of scale up and down. Um, Schools go, it says up to 40,000. Large schools can go from 15,000 to up to 60,000, as we'll see here with like Arizona State. What do we got? Arizona State, Texas A&M, UT Austin, and these are getting bigger by the year. These were in like Arizona was in the 40s or high 30s when we started the blue list. So they're growing, and there's also a grad school at Arizona as well. So we're talking like a small city, or maybe not even that small. But so what does it mean on a practical level to be at a big school versus a small school? Obviously, the big schools tend to have the big stadium cheers. They tend to have abundant major choices. They tend to have a lot of Greek life. They tend to be very busy and active. If we go to Ohio State and we're looking at, the Oval, this is like a parade ground every day when students are crisscrossing, from their classes. There are, you know, all the events tend to just be large scale. For some students, that's exciting because anonymity, like in what is it, The Great Gatsby, the most intimate parties are the big ones, and that can happen a lot of times at big schools. You have so many people that you form little tribes, and that becomes more intimate. But then on the other hand, big schools, you do lose a lot as well. You will lose the small classes. You will lose usually the courses where your professor will be inviting the whole class to dinner with her and her husband, or him and his wife, or them and their dog, whoever it's going to be. And you're not doing, the sitting on the lawn. Let's go to like some of the small schools. Like let's go to like a Bowdoin, a school like this, 2,000 students. The environment here is pretty much everyone participates in intramural sports. People recognize each other, every day crossing the quads. It's like going to a high school. A lot of high schools will hover around this size, at least where we are in Southern California. So some of them bigger. So when you go to school like this, yes, you will definitely have a better faculty teacher ratio, 8 to 1. Some of the big schools have, 16 to 1. So you definitely will have more time with your professors. You definitely will be able to participate in class more, more Socratically asking questions and having seminar style courses. But at the same time, when we start to look at, the departments and programs at smaller schools, you might realize that, you know, there is a much shorter list. Like, let's look at this list of majors. You know, it's a fair amount. But now, for sake of argument, let's go to Austin. And now we're going to look at their programs. And let me make this larger. And so each school is going to have, these are all undergrad. See all the B's over here? It's bachelor's. So scroll, 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 scroll. And what's going to happen, not only are you going to have more majors, you're going to have more interdisciplinary activity. So a psych program might mix with a biology program for a biopsychology program. And that's how data science came about, because schools are taking their comp sci programs and mixing them with their stats departments. So with this interdisciplinary aspect, not only do you tend to have more majors, but you tend to also have more courses. So if I go to a major like let's go to psych. So I go to psychology, and these are just the upper levels because they're starting in three. Oh, this is lower division. So I guess they're the 100s and 200s would be the gen eds for the school. So if I look at this, I can see my little dot up here. There's going to be a lot of scrolling of a lot of classes. These are all different courses. So it means with the number of professors that they have in psychology, they're not all doing the same, what we call section, the same class at different times. They're actually doing different courses with different names, taking their different skill sets and building a more robust course offering. So you can see the advantages to going to a big school, and you can also see the advantages to going to a small school. In our experience, a lot of students, when they apply to schools, will tend to have a little bit of a mix, some big and small schools, depending who they are. Bigger schools tend to be more, I don't want to say safe always, because there are a lot of big competitive schools like the UCs or Michigan, UT Austin we were just looking at. But obviously, with larger schools, there are more spaces, so the selectivity goes down a little bit. So if a student has all small schools in the list, by the time they get to the safe zone, those schools are usually going to compromise a little bit of their education quality. On the other hand, if a student has small schools at the top and then they have bigger schools in the bottom, they may maintain the same level of education, but just the school is broadening in its size. We have to remember that, small classes, let's go to a small school really quickly. Let's go to Occidental. And if I go to this school, it's 2,000 students. That's not even super, super small. But if I go here and I look at the, people in each major, I have, uh, you know, 50 or 38 kids in biology, 14 in mathematics. You guys can read this. I don't need to go through all of them. 11 in chemistry, 9 in physics. So these are very small departments. Obviously, this is per year. So there'd be 4 times that approximately. So 40 kids in physics approximately. So again, you will have smaller class sizes, more interaction with your teachers, but then you will have limited course options and probably limited majors. Also, this will affect the clubs and activities. When you are at a small school, you'll probably see a much less robust list of activities. This is pretty decent. But if we go to a big school like Michigan, it's probably going to be 5 to 10 times as many as this. Then again, these might have fewer people. They might be less competitive for the ones that you really want. So that's another trade-off. What else? I think that's, for the most part, the big things to think about is the majors, the class size, the activity on campus. Oh yeah, and if you're a big sports fan, you probably are going to lean towards the bigger schools because you want that big stadium experience, and just that kind of very active lifestyle.